Welcome back. My next guest is one of the most recognizable billionaire investors in the world. He has big stakes in Citigroup, Apple, News Corp, and Twitter, among others. He also has the pulse on the oil markets as a member of the Saudi royal family. It's a pleasure to welcome back to the closing bell His Royal Highness Prince Alwaleed Bin Talal. Good to see you, Prince Alwaleed. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good to you, Maria. Always.
And here you are back at the New York Stock Exchange. Did you go to some of the posts and see some of your investments?
Yeah, we visited the Citibank location and we've seen the Twitter page. Yeah.
And Twitter is right here as well. Okay, I want to talk about your investments. People follow you in terms of how you're allocating capital. But let me first zero in on some of the news of the day, because the Sunday Times reporting that Saudi Arabia is teaming up with Israel for a possible attack on Iran if it does not curb its nuclear program. Saudi Arabia, of course, denying such an alliance, but is there concern about what's happening in terms of Iran and that stockpiling?
Yeah, as for this report about the discussion between Saudi Arabia and Israel, today Saudi Arabia has officially denied that in a press release by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So that's first. Now, as for the concern, yes, I think all the region has a lot of concerns about what's happening in Iran, and especially that the discussions between the United States and the other European powers and Iran did not really go well at last time. Our concern is that the West is a bit too eager in succumbing and giving up some of the gains that were made by the economic sanctions. So we have to be very careful not to minimize the pressure, but to even add to the pressure right now on Iran to succumb to the international community's request to have it nuclear free.
So it's a balance. I mean, what do you think is really needed to end Iran's nuclear program then?
Well, clearly the fact that they're beginning to negotiate and talk more seriously, that's a very good indication. And this has to be given the chance. But to reduce right now the very economic sanctions that caused Iran to come to the negotiation table is not prudent at this stage at all.
What's your take on Syria and the U.S. response to Assad? What about that? How did the U.S. handle that in your view?
Well, I mean, when the President of the United States draws the red line, and that red line crossed, and then he asks for any opportunity to back off from it, and whereby Putin comes and grabs that opportunity and backs off. I mean, this is really it doesn't really reflect well in the international eyes.
For a moment there, it looked like Putin was in charge. I mean, Russia's the leader of the world.
Well, sure. I mean, Russia right now came back not from the back door, but came from the front door. And we are reminded now by what took place in the 1960s and 70s when Russia and Egypt were very close allies. And now, sure enough, Russia has sent a big delegation to Egypt to strike big military deals with them. And this all was done because of the non-availability of a foreign policy of the United States towards the Middle East.
And you made comments this morning, I saw, about Egypt. You have grave concerns about the Muslim Brotherhood. Tell us about that.
Well, as you know, that the Muslim Brotherhood were elected elected Morsi to be elected the president of Egypt, and clearly the direction they're moving towards is to have a complete authoritarian regime. And as you say, it was supposed to be one man, one vote, one time. And clearly the military took the corrective measures and to reflect the demands and the requests of the people that went to the street in the millions to ask for the removal of the Islamic Brotherhood headed by Morsi. And exactly what happened. And I believe right now that the military regime now headed by President Morsi, by the Defense Minister Morsi, will re-establish the democracy rule in Egypt hopefully next year.
Okay, so you feel better about that now?
No doubt about that, because it's very clear Egypt was heading towards the wrong direction.
Let me ask you about the NSA spying scandal. A lot of backlash after all of this came out. Is it impacting the U.S. standing throughout the world? What's your take on all of the spying?
Well, no doubt. I mean, look, the issue of spying, we all knew before that U.S. and Russia and all the big superpowers, they spy on each other. But having it go public that much and have the United States spy on its allies like Merkel and some presidents in Latin America was really
extraordinary.
Extraordinary for sure. And the United States have enough wounds, budget deficit, national debt, Obamacare, Iran, Syria, Palestine. They have enough headaches, really, and this was really a completely unneeded additional burden on the Obama administration.
So how do you see it playing out? I mean, do you think this sticks? People remember around the world? Does the U.S. look different to our friends around the world today?
Well, I mean, this issue of spying, I think, will eventually fade away because we all knew in advance, and before the Snowden effect, that the spying used to take place. I think that now, the more fundamentally, I think the United States has to really manage its internal affairs, Obamacare issue, the budget deficit, the national debt situation, and also to have a coherent and cohesive and comprehensive policy towards not only the Middle East, but also the whole world, and be consistent in its approach.
Let me ask you about the oil markets, because here we are looking at oil today at $92.95 a barrel. The International Energy Agency said last week that the United States is likely to become the world's top oil producer by 2016. You and I have spoken about this in the past, and you have certainly been, very, very vocal in terms of pushing Saudi Arabia to diversify a bit, not depend so much. How do you see this, and how worried are you about fracking, for example, in the United States, empowering the U.S. to become the lead oil exporter?
Yeah. Clearly, the United States is heading towards the direction of not only being oil sufficient, but also potentially being an oil exporter, which means that its reliance and dependence on OPEC, let alone on the Gulf region and Saudi Arabia, will diminish substantially, if not really disappear completely. Having said, there's no doubt that geopolitical situation will be impacted somehow. Having said that, also that you have to understand the United States relationship with Saudi Arabia is not really much dependent on oil and finance and economics. Saudi Arabia is the leader of the Islamic world, and the vacuum right now taking place in Iraq, in Syria, and in Egypt, Saudi Arabia is filling that vacuum. So still, America is going to lead the whole world and is going to have a foreign policy towards the whole world. So Saudi Arabia is still going to be an important country for the United States in its foreign policy.
Are the Saudis right now producing more oil to push oil prices down so that the fracking becomes less of an issue? Tell us what's going on.
No. What happened, Saudi Arabia's oil production was around 9.5. When Libya, because of the internal turbulences, stopped production, and Iraq's production got affected also, it went up to more than 10 million barrels. But now when Libya's production came back into effect and Iraq stabilized, actually increased its production, Saudi Arabia went back to its quota, which is around 9.5 million barrels a day. So really we are working as a stabilizer, frankly speaking, in this industry. No, we are not really overproducing right now to lower the price, because Saudi Arabia's position right now that a price between 95 to 100 is really good for consumers and good also for producers.
So do you think that's where this market will be for the foreseeable future? We're at $92 right now. What's your take on oil prices? Yeah. And what if we do see more shale discoveries in the United States?
I think that the oil is a commodity. It depends on supply and demand. And clearly, with more supply coming in the market, there's no doubt if OPEC does not reduce its production of oil, the price will go down. So we have seen no one talks anymore about the price of oil being 150 or above. Just a few years ago we were talking about that, and now we're seeing price hovering around 90, if not possibly below than that.
Yeah.
So we are in delicate matter, and I went public in Saudi Arabia by asking publicly and very bluntly the Saudi ministers, concerned ministers, to diversify the income of Saudi Arabia and don't be dependent on oil only.
What should they be diversifying into?
Oh, Saudi Arabia has lots of commodities. Has magnesium, has silver, has gold, has platinum, has all kinds of commodities underground. I think this has to come up, and we have to diversify our income into tourism, into many other areas that really could be a source of income for Saudi Arabia.
This is very important information that you're giving us. Your Highness, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we'll hear about Saudi Prince Alwaleed's investments, my conversation with billionaire investor Saudi Alwaleed. Prince Alwaleed will be back in a moment. What are his hottest investments right now, and does he think the market is due for a pullback, like Carl Icahn told us earlier? Don't touch that remote. We'll talk Twitter, Apple, Citi, and a lot more. Stay with us.
And the management of Twitter is how monetize at maximum that business model. With more than 2.4 billion people, internet users in the world, and with 1.5 billion smartphones in the world and rising every day, and with Twitter only having 235 million users, active users every month, this really, you can see how the potential is up for Twitter to regain and gain more ground.
I know allocating the stock when they first went public was delicate. Did you want more stock?
No, we were happy with what we have.
Okay. So you think the stock is going higher. What else do you like in this social media space? Because as you just said, one of the big issues is this company is not profitable, and they have not given us a path to when they will make money.
Yeah, fine. As for Twitter, You know that they are not profitable because the objective right now is to reinvest in market research and advanced technology, just like Amazon. Amazon, keeps on plowing back all its income into expanding. So I think people should be really happy and satisfied that the fact that Twitter right now is just plowing back all its money back in the system to have more growth. And you also remember you own a very important company in China called Buy360, which is really the Amazon of China.
Yeah, and do you also own Amazon?
Yeah, we used to Amazon,
yeah.
But now we went to 360 in China.
To the Chinese company.
Yes, another internet Chinese company.
Yeah, we've talked about this actually in the past. What else within technology would you be putting new money to work right here?
We're holding companies, so we are always looking for any opportunity that come up. Twitter came up, and we just grabbed the opportunity, and we believe that really the future is very bright for Twitter.
What about Apple? What's your take on Apple right here?
Well, Apple, that is facing a lot of, headwind right now because of the very fierce competition from Android. But at the end of the day, still, you have to understand that the expectation is very high from Apple, and they have a lot of profits still. This company is still flushing huge amounts of profits every year.
So when you look at sort of the old guard and the new guard, would you put money to names like Microsoft, names like, Intel, the names of 20, 30 years ago, or would you stick with some of these newer names like the Twitter and the social networkers?
Well, the technology industry right now is divided. You have the Microsoft, the Ciscos, the Intels, and possibly the Oracles of the world, are really old technology that they still have some value there. But also there's the growth companies like Facebook, Google, even Google, and Twitter. So really, there are two industries right now within the technology in this arena.
Yeah, would you buy Google?
At 1,000, a bit high, obviously. But Google is a very a good company, and I have all respect to its leadership.
Yes, I know that. I know that you are good friends with Eric Schmidt.
Eric, very good friend, Eric, yes.
So let me ask you about financials, because you have been a long-time fan and supporter and investor in Citigroup. JP Morgan, certainly in the crosshairs of regulators, the U.S. government, mortgages during the housing boom. Do you think right now that the banks are through the worst of it, or will we see more lawsuits? And what are you expecting from Citi in terms of the regulatory bite?
And now, as far as the banks are concerned, there's no doubt that the worst is over. And I think the banks are now not only capitalized, they are overcapitalized, and they are very conservative in their approach. I just met Mr. Corbett today, and he's really maintaining his revenue growth, if not going up, at least maintaining what it is right now. And he has very strong grip on expenses going down. So the operating leverage of Citi now is very much under control. The issue right now is not with the banks, it's really with the regulators. You have the your Volcker rule that's still pending up there. The Basel's rule has not been completely finalized. And the Dodd-Frank thing is still developing. So I think that the regulators have to put the house in order across the Atlantic, east and west, and get exactly what they want in motion. So at least the banks know exactly what are the rules of engagement and the rules of the game going forward.
Well, that's the issue. There isn't any clarity.
Correct. There's uncertainty from the regulators.
So from an investment standpoint, here you are putting huge amounts of money to work in this market. Do you want to take to the sidelines until some of this is cleared up, or are you seeing attractive opportunities now?
No, we are already invested in Citi. I mean, this investment has been there since a long time. But clearly, whenever there's uncertainty in an industry, you would like to wait until that's applicable for new entrants for new people entering the market, is to really take their time and not to invest until there's clarity in the regulatory arena.
Now, earlier today, Carl Icahn made an announcement basically saying that he's not going anywhere in terms of Apple. He said he doesn't want to fight, but he's not going anywhere. And as a result of that, Apple stock traded down. Do you agree that that Apple should do a stock buyback? Do you think that with all of that cash, a lot of it overseas, they should be putting that money toward increasing the buyback?
Usually in my relationship with management, I defer to management in their objectives in either having a share buyback program or issue dividends or etc. But I think this public interference in the management of companies is something I do not follow.
Yeah.
So I do not side with that path at all.
It's really interesting that you say that,
yes.
Because this whole active management, active investors have been debated. Do you want to just stick with management and let them lead? I mean, the other thing that Carl Icahn said tonight is that this market is in for a big fall.
Yeah.
When you look at the broad market, Where do you want to allocate most of the capital? Is it in the U.S., Europe, valuations, emerging markets? Do you think U.S. stocks are headed for a fall?
Yeah. First of all, I mean, we are long-term investors. We're not short-term investors. I mean, some people who are really are short-term investors like to make a big buck, as you say, and leave. You know,
they're in it for the quick.
Yes, and we're for the long term. As for the opportunities, there are many opportunities in the world, but you have to be very focused and you have to be very selective, because there are many industries that are still lucrative, and depends on where you are geographically. For example, Middle East. In Middle East, for example, the issue of real estate is very much lucrative, contrary to many other countries in the Western world. So really, it depends on which areas you go to. For example, now in the Western world, clearly the social media is hot and is very much in demand. So really, it depends on where you are geographically, and accordingly, you can decide which area and which area of investment you get into.
Are you invested in Europe right now?
I mean, we have some investments, as usual, yes, before, yes, since a long time.
What about the hotel business? Your Highness, I know that you were meeting with some of your partners, Four Seasons. Talk to us about what's going on in the hotel business right now.
No doubt that we're involved in the Four Seasons with Mr. Bill Gates' company called Cascade, and we're involved with the Fairmont that owns the Raffles and the Swiss Hotel with the Qatari partners, and we also have the fifth brand called Movenpick with our German partner. So really, the hotel industry has really began moving up since a year, and the cycle now turned very positively. We can see occupancy rate is up, revenue per RevPAR is up, and the whole industry began picking up right now. So yes, we are very optimistic about that, and we can see this in the management companies' results and the real estate portion of the hotel industry.
So do you think that's emblematic of what's going on in the world, that the economy is just getting better? I mean, you look at New York, it's very tough to get a hotel room, and it's expensive.
Oh yeah, I mean, no doubt that we are seeing stabilization in the world economies, and things are improving, and the hotel industry reflects that very clearly, and we see this across the board. It's very clear in United States and Europe, less so in Far East, because there's an oversupply of hotels. So it's a recycle. In Europe right now, in the last 5 years or 7 years, not many hotels were built. So when occupancy went up and revenue, RevPAR went up, RevPAR is revenue per available room, went up, we've seen a lot of demand right now. So now new hotels are going to be built there.
Okay. Now, you also hold a sizable stake in Fox and in News Corp. So far, no succession plans for Rupert Murdoch. Talk to us about that. Who would you like to see running the company? Is James viable after the hacking scandal?
I said very clearly, and I'm public on that. I mean, Rupert Murdoch I just met today, by the way. He is in very good health. But God forbid, if something happens, definitely my first nomination is really for James Murdoch. No doubt about that.
Okay, I see.
He's a very able and capable person.
So you're meeting with the managements while you're here in New York of many of your investments. You met with Corbett at Citi. Did you learn anything from Corbett in terms of his next steps?
Well, I mean, Corbett is a very conservative and very meticulous person, very articulate manager, and he's really looking at the revenue part, looking at controlling the cost of Citi, and very alert to the issue of having a good operating leverage, so the market looks positive to Citi. And you've seen how the stock market reacted to Citi's Corbett's moves.
And I assume he hasn't given you any word on a dividend. I know that's what you would like.
No, I think what he gave me is what's public, is that all banks are going to submit their
the CCAR, the capital
in January, and they'll have the results sometimes in March. And based on that, I think the issue of share buyback or dividends will be decided. So I think I will defer to the management of Citibank on that particular subject.
Final question, Your Highness. You not only are in business with Bill Gates in the hotel business, but you're also working with him on polio in the philanthropic part of the company. What are you doing with Bill Gates?
Yeah, Bill Gates invited my Alwaleed Bin Talal Foundation to be a part of his efforts, the Bill Gates and Melinda efforts to eradicate polio in the world, and we accepted immediately to join his efforts in that good cause to eradicate polio from the whole world, and we participate with them. And I think my friendship with him really made me get very close to him and understand his very strong will to help the world community in eradicating many diseases. So really, and I'll tell you news right now that I did nominate him for the Nobel Prize, and I did send a letter to the committee over there, and they replied to me. And I really believe that Bill Gates, although his work does not explicitly work in peace, but his work in education and health help a lot alleviate a lot of pressures that really help building peace in the world.
It's extraordinary, actually. His legacy will be more about giving $100 billion away than about founding Microsoft. Your Highness, good to have you on the program.
Pleasure, Maria.
So appreciate your time tonight.
Anytime.
His Highness, Prince Alwaleed joining me here. The Dow in record territory again today. What will tomorrow bring? Wall Street's Money Pros will be up next, giving you a